Hello, and welcome back to the Macca's Talk Hockey Podcast, the podcast where me and my brother Charlie and also our friend Dan talk about English ice hockey, specifically the NIHL. And you'll notice Charlie is finally back. It's been a long time, but you've joined at the end of season episode. Probably might be the longest one we're gonna do, Charlie.
I've done a Mark Stone. I've taken out a good player and put myself on IR until playoffs. I'm back for playoffs.
Yeah, that's a good comparison actually. But yeah, you're back, Charlie. How you been? Any updates?
Yeah, good. Yeah, it was nice taking a little break from hockey. Well, not break from hockey, but you know what I mean. Break from talking about hockey quite as much. But no, I've been really good. Been enjoying myself. Been to probably only one country. It's been a bit disappointing with my countries, but I just come back from Italy while you guys were in New York. Have you done a podcast since New York?
No,
Nah,
this is the
No, oh
first
my
one.
days. The viewers
first
have got a
one.
lot to catch
Been
up
two
on. So
weeks.
I'm doing well. I'm doing well.
Yeah, that's good to hear. As I said, we've not done an episode for 2 weeks, but I thought we'd just save it, do a big end of season one. We won't really go over the last couple weeks, every game, too much. There's a couple we'll pick out. But the plan for this episode, we've got an interview which I did with Innes Gallagher, um, actually earlier today, talking about a bit about his career and then the league title win as well. Obviously, Leeds Knights league champions. We haven't mentioned that yet. Obviously, they weren't just before we went out to New York. There was the big game between them and MK, which we'll get to in a minute. So we'll cut to Innes's interview at some point in this episode. But we're going to go through our all-star team, some awards, some opinions from all of us on players we've enjoyed this season. We're going to go through each team and pick out a player who we'd like to give a shout out to, reflecting on the season a little bit. But then we've also got our playoff predictions, and Charlie aced it last year, so he's going to look to try and ace it once again this year. So
All
we've
I've
got
said
a
as
lot
well,
to.
my league predictions weren't far off either.
Yeah, we were
League
looking
predictions
back
were
a
very
bit.
close.
And I think the only ones you said, out of hope, I think, Charlie, you said Swindon would win the league instead of Leeds.
Off camera, I said Leeds. On camera, I said Swindon.
But you predicted all three teams not to make it, and you predicted the order from the rest of the league. So
From
fair enough.
fourth to bottom, I predicted that.
But guess
Um,
what? I
yeah.
predicted. I predicted
Um,
Sobchak, and I got that one bang on. So
Dan got that as well.
yeah, Dan did say that, but we'll get into that in a bit. But yeah, Leeds Knights, they win the league 3 times in a row now. They've won it, but it wasn't as easy this season. And the make or break game was that game against the Milton Keynes Lightning. Dan, before we get into that, actually, should we quickly talk about our trip?
Yeah, why not? Let's talk about the trip.
Yeah, we won't go too much into it, but we went to New York. We didn't do the New York kind of trip. We did a couple games at Madison Square, but we went to Boston and Washington instead. We did a lot of car journeys, not car, bus journeys with that, coach journeys. So we must have spent over 24 hours probably traveling. And it was worth it, Dan. It was worth it because we ticked off another two arenas.
Yeah, it was definitely worth it. I mean, we were talking about it before the trip, and we were obviously there was an option of watching another game in New York, but we decided to obviously take the trip up to Boston
Yeah.
instead. And we were like, we want to do another arena, we want to do another state, so we went over to there, and yeah, it was just a really good experience, really. Obviously, the coast journeys were a bit rough, but I said after that long 12-hour one, none of the journeys sort of felt that long. So it was sort of a good thing from that. But yeah, it was an unbelievable experience, and I loved every minute of it.
Yeah, so I would suggest anyone who's watching if to plan save money for a trip like that. You don't have to do as big as we did, where we went to Boston and Washington, these long coach journeys. You can do the trip which me, Charlie, and Dan did a couple years ago, where you just stay within New York and then take a little trip to New Jersey. So you've just got to time it right with the fixtures for the New York Rangers, the Islanders, and New Jersey, and you can get a nice little trip where they're all on home stretches. So that's what we did. But if you had to pick a favorite thing about the trip, Dan.
I mean, watching McDavid was unreal. I loved watching McDavid. First time I've seen him live, I knew he was going to be amazing, but just seeing him in person was so good. But I think it's got to be. I think it's just the traveling, really. I like to see in all the other arenas and sort of experiencing the other sort of atmospheres and sort of what the other rinks bring. And
Yeah,
yeah, it was nice. And of course, watching Toronto play and watching them
yeah.
win.
Yeah, both our teams won actually. So
Yeah.
both won at the Garden as well. McDavid scored. It was an absolute snipe. And the food, I have to say, the food. We tried a lot of like not viral but big named places in America. So obviously Raising Cane's, you got to try that just for the sauce alone. Um, Dave's Chicken, shout out Mitch, who took us to that one in
That was
Boston.
good.
Dave's
That
Chicken
was
was
better.
really good. Don't
That
get
was better than
anything
Raising
above a
Cane's.
medium though. Medium or lower spiciness. Yeah, it was really hot, the hot one. And then Joe's Pizza was really good. Pretty overrated for how much people rate it in terms of it's the best pizza ever. I'd probably say a Domino's is just as good, but it was a good pizza. And they're massive slices. And then probably the best food for me was the cookies at Crumble. That I can actually say, and I'll be honest about it, that was the best cookie I've ever had. It had 750 to 800 calories in one cookie. It's just mental, and that was the best probably food we had on the trip. Would you say, Dan, along with the sauces?
Yeah, the cookies were good, but they're not the best to eat at like 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, we had to finish
They
it in the morning. Yeah,
yeah, they're not the best to eat for breakfast because they sort of they set you up for the day to be full.
yeah,
But I know it's America. You get used to it. Sort of all the food feels like that. So you just got to enjoy it and just eat anything you can.
yeah. I didn't actually put on weight. I weighed myself, and I stayed the same really. So, yeah, I don't know how I
I
managed
mean,
that, but
the walking maybe, but we
yeah,
didn't
we did a
really
bit
do
of
too much
walking.
walking.
But yeah, if you need any help organising any trips, I'm sure I can help you with dates and stuff because I've organised the last couple ones. So yeah, that was our trip in a nutshell. And well, just before we went out to the trip, you went to the MK Leeds game, Dan. We were following it, and probably the biggest game, the make or break, Charlie, of the season. If MK had won that, it would have been back in their hands. But the Leeds Knights, as they do, they won. Was it 4-1 in the end, or
Yeah,
3-1 in the end? And yeah, just that one in the league really. That game got them over the
Yeah.
line.
I said to you both that I thought Leeds were going to do it in that game. And I don't know, there is something about them big game moments, them pressure moments where Leeds manage to do it and MK do struggle in them big game moments a lot of the time. Um it's it's where it's such a pressure moment, it's such a big game, and I think the Leeds big players just know how to do it, and probably I can imagine if Dan will probably agree was man of the match gospel that night.
oh yeah, 100%.
He's lights out, and the most important position in hockey is goalie. And Leeds have the best goalie in their league, even if there's three imports in this league. It doesn't matter. Gospel is the guy who stands on his head when his team needs him to, and in MK away, probably the hardest rink in the league to go to still, even though they have lost a couple times there this year compared to last. He just stood on his head, and that's what he does. And fair play to him. MK did take the lead though in the game, didn't they?
They went 1-0
Yeah,
up.
they took. Yeah, they went one
Just
nil up, and then
shows
but
Leeds' resilience, really.
they did the same in the other game against Leeds as well. But Leeds just come back and they sort of find their way into games.
Yeah,
And
they know how to do it.
after they sort of got in control, they scored a really early goal into the second period, which sort of started and got them going. And then after that, I was saying to you guys on the phone on the way home. After that went in, it just didn't seem like Leeds were losing that game. They just managed the game perfectly. The defense was solid. They trapped the neutral zone up perfectly, like you have to in MK, and they just played a perfect road game and just got it done. And just again, they made MK look like they were struggling to create stuff, and to do that against MK in their own rink, like I've always said, is so hard to do. And Leeds just seem to do it perfectly, and that's why they're obviously league winners 3 times in a row.
Yeah,
Are
beating MK
relentless.
twice away in the season. And they've struggled actually to do that. And in the game where it actually has mattered this season, where it's been a lot tighter, the they've stepped up as a team and done that, and you could tell they were a team that's done that before, and maybe Milton Keynes haven't quite had that experience in them big moments. I'm sure a lot of them will learn from it, those MK players. But yeah, Leeds doing it, and they were never going to lose on that Sunday. They went behind against Solway, but they were never going to lose, even if it was a 3 game weekend. And just again, shout out Sam Gospel, probably going to mention him quite a bit in this episode. 95 saves out of 100 across a 3 game weekend, playing every minute of every game. Just ridiculous. And I've questioned whether he'll be able to keep this level up. He's done it so much, it can impact you if you're taking on such a load every season, but every season he just keeps at that level and at that level above every single other goalie. So yeah, we'll probably get back to him in the minute. But yeah, Leeds Knights winning the league, and the other talking point was the playoff battle, and it was the Tigers eventually who did win on Saturday night against the Wildcats. I thought they were actually quite impressive. The Wildcats did have the lead, probably a bit disappointed we give up that lead, but it shows the difference of the Knights team, not Knights, sorry, the Telford team now compared to when they had that little rut at the start of the season.
Yeah, Telford clutched up, didn't they, at the end of the season, and got the job done, and obviously finished it off in Swindon, which was really important for them. And I just think they kind of managed to find a way. They've had a lot of difficulties this year, Telford. I probably would say them and Bees have had the toughest seasons in terms of injuries, players going out, players coming in.
Yeah.
They've just had a very messy year in terms of a lot of structure, and their players kind of just found a way. They have two forwards playing D who started the year as forward, and they still only have 5D, and that's two of them being forwards. So they found a way.
Yeah, disappointing for Solway. They kind of hit a bad patch at the most important time. They had 3-6-5 losses in a row, which was an absolute killer for them. They lost by 1 goal, I think, so many times in this final stretch of the season, and they haven't quite been able to get over the line. And I'm sure next season is the season they have to get the playoffs. The third time lucky, the third time into their NIHL kind of existence. So disappointing for them, but we'll have to see how they come back next season. A couple news stories. Luke Ferrara, he extended his stay with the Phantoms. I don't think he was going to go anywhere, obviously getting that captaincy. And then Matt Hayward announcing his retirement at the end of this season. He'll be hoping he can go out with an even bigger bang with the playoffs. But we've had him on the podcast, Charlie. Underrated humour, just that dad humour. All the Leeds players say that he is the dad of the group. But how good has he been, Dan, this season? He might not have got as many points, but he just does his job, doesn't he? On that second line centre role.
Yeah, he's just the guy. He does his work, he does his business, and gets on the ice. And he really is. Obviously, the players say that he's like the dad of the group, and on the ice, he is that sort of leader that can sort of help those players out. And I mean, he's done it at all levels. He's got so much experience, and bringing in a guy like that to that Leeds team is so dangerous because he'll just make anyone that he's with better. And he just does the simple things right. He can change his game. Like depend on what sort of game it is.
Yeah.
He can play a little scrappy game. He can play a clever game. Always in the right positions. And yeah, he's going to be a big loss for Leeds, but no doubt, I'm sure Leeds will either promote a guy up in their lineup already or bring in a guy to obviously fill that spot.
Yeah, well, they
Yeah,
got.
I was going to add probably the biggest loss I think he brings is the leadership skills. I think in a game like MK away, where it's a must-win game, I can imagine he's a big vocal piece in the dressing room, calming players down when you're 1-0 down after the first period and just saying, "We got this, boys. We know what to do." And he really does lead on the ice. I'm pretty sure he scored in that game, if I'm not mistaken. He would have played a part in
Don't
some
think
sort
he
of way.
scored.
I don't think he scored, but I
He
mean,
would have
just
played
him,
a
just
part.
him being on the ice is just a big
And
factor.
he's
And
sick at draws as well, which is
oh
an
yeah,
underrated
Great
factor.
face-off guy.
Players
yeah,
who
yeah,
can win face-offs in big moments is so underrated, and if you can have the puck, then you're gonna have more chances of scoring. And yeah, I really like Hayward. He's a cool guy, and I think we saw it coming probably that he was gonna retire, but I don't think any Leeds fan at least didn't want to hear it.
Yeah, he scored 269 points in his last three seasons. He had that crazy first season of 113 points. So yeah, he's a really nice guy, and he'll be hoping he can end it with that treble. But he's had such a good career, obviously a legend with Glasgow as well. Got that testimonial. The final bit of news story we've got to bring it up was the crazy events on Saturday between Hull and Bristol. A nothing game, really. Bristol's last home game, wanting to go out with a bang, and it kicked off with less than 5 minutes to go. If we're looking at the Dops list, there was oh gosh, how much is there? I think there's 8 players on the game review panel, including 5 from Bristol and 3 from the Seahawks. For Bristol, it doesn't really matter. The bans might go into next season if obviously they stay with the team. But the big one was Bobby Chamberlain, and it's a shame, isn't it, Dan? Because I actually think he's not. He actually has. We've complimented so much how he's stepped up with that captaincy role, and he's not been as chippy and the type of Bobby Chamberlain we've seen the past few seasons. And at probably the most important time where you just don't want to get any bans, you don't want to do anything silly. He just lost his cool in that moment, where there was no penalties given, and he might be banned for playoffs. We're expecting he probably will be.
Yeah, that's the tough thing. It's we know what Bobby's about. We know what game he plays, and you can tell he's settled down this year. Like he's really put his head down, picked up a lot of points. I think did he finish the season off as the highest scoring Brit?
Yeah, behind Brown.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's still an unbelievable season. Obviously, Brown's tough to beat, but I think it's it's sad because it got obviously to the point where, like you said, the penalties weren't being called, and obviously the frustration kicked in from that. And a player like Bobby, he's still got that game about him that obviously is a bit like he's an aggressor, and I think at the time it just sort of got to him a little bit, and obviously he took it into his own hands to sort the game out. Obviously, also being that captain as well, and when the sort of flicks like that in your head, obviously it's tough to sort of hold yourself back, and it all just sort of went from there really. And obviously Bristol aren't going to be bothered. Like their season's finished. They've got not anything to play for, so they're not affected by it at all. But it's Hull that's going to be affected, and they're going to feel the real pain of it if anything obviously big does come from it. Obviously we're still yet to hear what's going on, but yeah, it will be interesting to hear and see how Hull obviously manage it as well.
Yeah, he got 3 separate game slash match penalties for his equipment. His equipment then got thrown into the crowd by Whitesay. It was just chaos, and then it restarted when Tommy was trying to snap the sticks and the helmet. You shouldn't be doing that, but that
Yeah, that's
restarted it all.
crazy, by the way. Like, I was watching the highlights of that, and the commentator he said he didn't have a problem with that. Like, you're having a laugh. The guy's snapping your
They
sticks behind
cost
the goal, and you haven't got a
hundreds. Yeah.
problem with that. Like, is
I
that
mean,
is
he
that all
probably
right?
don't care. He's
Oh
probably
yeah,
not. He
he
probably
won't
won't be
care.
returning next season. But that kicked it all off
I
again,
think
and somehow Hodgkinson escaped not getting a penalty in that
Oh,
game. And I think that's people were like, "How's he not got a ban?" But you have to get given a 5+ game to be automatically looked at. Otherwise, Bristol have to put in a review for Hodgkinson. I think that's how it works. But Lee Hayward getting a match penalty as well. Will be interesting to see if he got smoked. By the way, he got
League
absolutely
Divots.
smoked by Lee Dewants into the boards. It was just chaos. And the game
it's like
actually got abandoned.
it's just a bit it's a bit mad, but like I think that's always the trip up of playing teams which like have nothing to play for.
Yeah.
Like it was their final home game of the year. They were beating Hull. I dread to think the way they were chirping them, and like I I feel frustrated for Bobby. I'm a fan of Bobby. I know he's not everyone's biggest fan. Like I love Bobby Chamberlain. He plays the game a fun way. I think he's had a brilliant season, and for me, this still doesn't take away from what Bobby Chamberlain's done. I think he's had a great year, and we say he's kept his discipline. I know his penalty minutes would have been inflated a little bit. He is second in the league in penalty minutes, so he's had his fair few pims this year. But like these things happen in the game, and as a captain, do I think sticking up for your team involves throwing your helmet and gloves at the Bristol bench? Not exactly, but if you want to make a statement, make it. And I'd be surprised if his ban was longer than the playoffs. But it is a knock for Hull, but it is. I do think it is difficult to play a team which has got absolutely nothing to lose, and when there's the heat of the moment, like the Hewitt thing, the more I
I was
reflect on
gonna
it, the hit, I do think it wasn't that bad. I know it sounds wrong, but the hit itself, Hewitt was down low, and I don't think it was a worst of hits, but I probably think it would be a penalty. The impact came through Smetham, like following through. The high stick to me looked worse. It just battened him in the head. And then obviously everything endured, but it's part of the game. Like these things will happen. It's men on the ice and all they have egos and it all kicked off. And it
I,
was just the joke going around the league at the moment is no one even thought about Leeds lifting the trophy. It was just World War Three on the Facebook timeline of what the flip's going on in Bristol.
Yeah, it got all the attention. I have to be consistent with it because I think Bonner's hit was a ban, and I think this Hewitt one is a ban as well. He may have had his head down a little bit, but he still hit his head. So I do think that was a ban. But hopefully Hewitt's all right. The high sticking, by the way. Oh, how is that not called? By the way, that was the most blatant high stick I think I've seen for a long time. And yeah, I Bobby shouldn't be jumping someone. He shouldn't. I could see the frustration, but he shouldn't be jumping someone. But yeah, as you said, Charlie, I hope it doesn't take away from the season he's had because he has had a fantastic season and he might return for some of the playoff games. He might get banned for a few of them, but to get banned for 6 games, that's quite hefty. So we'll have to see. It will come out on Thursday, I believe, when the Dops do. So yeah, just crazy scenes on the Saturday. Was there anything else which happened this weekend which we really need to talk about?
You got the Sesenis and Cooper thing.
Oh yeah,
Oh
that
yeah,
they got
that was
five and a
last week.
four. Pretty
So
crazy again,
I,
Charlie. I
I
didn't
wanted to
really see
comment
it.
on this. I think it's a disgrace how Jack Cooper was banned for 4 games. I'll say it as it is. I'm happy to say my opinion. People know this. Sirisenis was cross-checking a guy on the floor who was not fighting. The guy on the floor was not fighting. If you've watched this and you disagree with what I'm about to say, I'm gobsmacked. But the guy on the floor was not fighting. It is a player's role then, because the refs won't doing it. The refs won't taking Sirisenis off the guy. Jack Cooper goes along and beats the hell out of Sirisenis. Should have he beat the hell out of him? Maybe not. But it was not third
At
man
least
in.
jump on him, yeah.
It was not third man in because the first guy wasn't fighting him. That's what annoys me here. A third man in is where two people have dropped the gloves, they're punching it out, and another guy comes in and starts punching. The guy Sirisenis was cross-checking didn't touch Sirisenis. And now Jack Cooper as a captain has got 4 game ban, 1 game less than Sirisenis for sticking up for his teammate. It's wrong. The whole point of fighting for me in the game is that it protects players. It's a safety mechanism on the ice because hockey is a dangerous sport. People have sticks, they have things, and what Sirisenis was doing was dangerous. I think everyone can agree on that. And
And he's
Jack
had
Cooper
history of
came
it as
in.
well. He's had history
Jack
of it.
Cooper came in to protect his teammate, and he goes and misses the first 2 games of playoffs. For me, that's wrong. I don't care what the rule book says. There's common sense in this. And Jack Cooper came in, protected his teammate, gets third man in when there was not even a fight in the first place. And I just think it's wrong because I think
Yeah.
Jack Cooper's doing what a captain should do in that situation. And Sirisenis, again, another team who haven't got anything to play for. They don't care about getting bans. Doesn't mean anything to them. He can do what he wants. He'll just miss pre-season. Who gives a monkeys? Like, and then Jack Cooper's now paying the price for sticking up for his team. I don't get stuff like that. And they're the bans which annoy me. Like the whole Bristol thing, fair enough. You can ban whoever you want there. But that one is like, that's safety for me. I know the rules, but I feel like you have to
I
take
agree. I
circumstances.
think, yeah, I think there's rules, and then you've got to use common sense alongside the rules with it because, yeah, you have to protect your teammates. And we'll lead on to that with the Swindon game where Bricknell and James Smith had a fight. And there was a bit of a bad hit, I'd say, on Wells. There was an elbow to Wells. you're always going to stick up when it's on Wells because he's our best player. And Britnell stood up for him. And fair play to James Smith. I'm going to say this. He might have got battered. Britnell might have got the most punches in. He might have won the fight. But James Smith coming up against Britnell and standing up for his Telford teammates, and Britnell also standing up for his Swindon teammates in a game which doesn't really matter for Swindon. Hopefully that will get loads more fans to come next week because that's the physicalness we like to see. But we just go back to the old saying, Dan. That's why fighting should be in hockey.
Yeah, 100%.
Let me
I
just
mean,
let Kitty in, by the way.
yeah, no worries, mate. Yeah, I mean, I mean, Bricknell fighting. He's a fighter. We've seen him fight before. And obviously Swindon have obviously already qualified for playoffs and stuff like that. But Smith, he's got his team there that he needs to fire up. And even though he didn't do great in the fight, he's still going to obviously fire his team up. And that that could potentially that moment could have been the reason why Telford obviously won that game because that
They were
can just
4-2 down at that point as well.
yeah, and that can give the team momentum. Just something like that. Even though he obviously didn't do great, he still managed to pump his team up. They showed respect in the penalty
Fist
box.
bumped straight away.
That was really good to see. It's almost like Smith wanted that fight because he knew what he could sort of do to his team to spark them. And yeah, I credit anyone that drops the gloves on the ice, especially dropping the gloves with a guy like Bricknell that has a history of fighting in all leagues. So massive credit to Smith and yeah, hockey's just one of those sports where respect is always given off the ice, and it's always good to see when it's like that. And hopefully through playoffs we can start seeing a bit more physicality after sort of how this season's ended,
Yeah.
because there have been a few times where there has been fights of to obviously stick up for your teammates and fire the team up, and playoffs is a perfect time for that. So fingers crossed we can see the mood move into playoffs and start getting those physical games going and that physical playoff hockey really starting.
Yeah, we've seen it in a couple games, kind of warming up for it. Couple shout outs. Ben Clark Leach, his first game for the Wildcats team, and he got a win, 8-4 win, 37 out of 41 saves, above a 9 save percentage in that game. So well done to Ben. And then a shout out to Nicholas Martin from Peterborough as well, 17-year-old. He also got his first goal for Peterborough in that 12-7 game. And then it was a 15-8 scoreline between Romford and Bristol Pitbulls. Just absolutely bonkers. Reed Morrison scored 5 goals. Lee Dewants getting 2 goals and an assist as well. The man who was playing National 2 at the start of this season gets called to play for Bristol in the National, going 2 levels up, and he scored twice and nailed Hayward the night before. So some weekend for Lee Dewants, who probably did not expect to be in that position. But I think that's all the shout outs from this weekend, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people wanting to know what our awards and team of the seasons are. So should we start with our awards? Now, there's a few disagreements from the awards. Charlie's fake mustache is going all over the place here on his
Oh,
cheek.
has it gone wrong?
Oh
Yeah,
no!
I'm about
Oh
to say it was on your
no!
cheeks there. Let me know in the comments if you know, if you're watching, if you knew Charlie had his fake mustache. But the awards then, and our player of the year, and I mentioned him earlier. I think we're all in agreement. It can only be one man, Mr. Sam Gospel. A 9.217 save percentage this season. It's been a lot tighter, but what hasn't been tighter is the goalie battle, and he has comfortably won that. And I'd say he's the MVP of the National League. Charlie, do you agree?
I think I would give Sam Gospel Player of the Year. Most important position in goalie, and he is the best goalie. And a game like Leeds MK just proves why he's Player of the Year.
Yeah, 100%. Dan, anything else to add on that? Is he your player of the year?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go for gospel, but obviously you got honourable mentions as well. I know everyone's talking about Sobchak. You can't. I know people are looking at points and stuff, but you can't look past
Yeah,
Sobchak on the ice and what he brings to that team. He really is the engine of that. And then also another one that we spoke about is obviously Miller.
yeah,
He's a guy that's really carried that Romford team at times, and he's really been that guy to sort of carry the play in those big games as well. He's always shown up. So yeah, there's a few honorable mentions there, but yeah, no doubt Gospel is player of the season for me.
And there's been a lot of debate with Brown and Gospel. Firstly, they're both Leeds Knights legends, and it's tough to compare them because they have different roles on the team. Brown's role is to score and get points, which he does to the best he can, and Gospel saves them. So they both do their own ways. And if you could only choose one for a statue, I'd combine them together so they're both there. So I don't think you can really debate that. But for me, this season, the way it's gone, it has to be Sam Gospel player of the season for me. Um, D man of the season. Oh, we'll do young player of the season because there's a bit
Actually,
of
Gospel
controversy.
44 out of 54 games as well, so he took on a big
Yeah,
load.
and those were all big competitive games, keeping it
Yeah,
at
he didn't
9-2.
miss out any of the big games.
Yeah. Um, the young player of the season then, and me and Dan gave it out to Max Stewart. It was very tight. It was a toss up between probably three players: Max Stewart, TJ Anderson, and Finley Braden. Now obviously I think the top two for me was obviously TJ and Max Stewart. Me and Dan went with Max Stewart. We overridden Charlie. We know Charlie. He can do his reasoning in a second, which I probably won't disagree with. But I've gone with Max Stewart because he scored 6 game-winning goals this season. He got 31 goals. And the difference between last season and this season in Max Stewart's game has been phenomenal. And he's been one of the Brits as well in their team, which has really stepped up. And in big moments as well, his overtime winner against Romford just before that Leeds game was massive to give him a chance. And yeah, I've gone with Max Stewart. Dan, anything other reasoning for Max Stewart?
Nice, pretty much exactly on what you said. He's just a big player this year, and a player in that MK team has got to show up if they want to get the minutes. And Max Stewart really has shown up this year and deserved the minutes that he's got. And
Yeah,
I
he's
mean,
earned it.
MK fans will be hoping that they keep hold of him for next year
Oh, be
because he could
tough.
be a really big piece of that team. But I know after that season, he's going to have a lot of teams looking at him. I know there's one team that he's really going to be wanting to get some attention from.
Well, he has got appearances for Belfast this season. He has been used. He's got some shifts now and again. Charlie, go on then,
I would have
Mister.
given it to TJ, yeah. Finished the season on 76
Sorry,
points.
just repeat who the player because I think it cut out.
TJ Anderson, I would have gone
Yeah.
for.
Who?
Some may call me biased, but I think he was a huge big game moments player. Romford got to a cup final this season, and he was the best player in that second leg of the semi final, from what I've been told by you guys.
Him and
Um,
Ethan James, yeah.
he was unbelievable in the second leg. Just not only did he get a lot of points this year in 76, but he turned up in the big game. He got 11 more points than Max Stewart. Only 5 less goals. I'm not unhappy with Max Stewart being the person. I'd have given it TJ. I just think 76 points as a 20-year-old in the National League's big, and it's his final year of under 21. Max Stewart's got one more year, so he can win it next year. But this year, I would have given it to TJ.
Yeah, it was a close battle, and I know Romford fans were unhappy we chose Max Stewart, but you could have given it to either of them. I think they've both been really good in their own way to their teams. D man of the year then, and I'll quickly just put this out there. We put Noah McMullen, and by I've put him out there because I didn't want to be biased. For me, and I know Dan and Charlie, they're going to say their bit in a minute. Ryan Wells for me, Swindon D man is the best player in the league. I think, along with Sam Gospel in terms of value. The I've not seen an import like Ryan Wells in this league. He's been absolutely phenomenal. And I don't think we will see an import like him for Swindon. But I went with Noah McMullen. One, because I didn't want to be biased. But Noah McMullen in a Leeds team which it's been a lot tighter this season. Noah McMullen has stepped up even more, and I know they've got Gospel, but you've still got the D in front of them, which does a big job. And I know you said McMullen Dan was a standout player in that game against Milton Keynes in shutting the game down. He scored a ridiculous amount of goals. He's got 13 goals this season from D, 46 points. He's helped. He's got that power play role this year, which I think has been huge. Their power play's been ticking at 32.5%. He's penalty killed. He's 5 on 5. He's probably got the most ice time on the team as well. So we did go with Noah McMullen. But Charlie, Ryan Wells, I know you wanted to speak on him.
Yeah, he's the best outfield player in this league. I think it's difficult because, as we've seen a lot on Twitter, I know you made a tweet on the Macca's account. A lot of people do like to look at hockey from stats, and it's definitely easier to do that, and I can be a culprit of that because we don't watch players week in, week out. But Wows is just next level, man. Like he doesn't make mistakes in every little play he does. He does it right, and his CV showed that when he came in, and he's just lived up to his CV, but better. Um, and like just when you watch him, he just is next level. I've spoke to coaches about him; they all say the same. I've spoke to players about him, players like from other teams, coaches and players. They all say the same. Ryan Wiles is just unplayable, and for me, he's the best outfield player in this league. And I would have given him D man of the season, but again, it's one of them things like if we take into account trophies and stuff, I'm fine with McMullen getting it. McMullen is comfortably the second best defenseman in this league. And yeah, I just think Ryan Wiles has been the best import of signs since Thomas Malazinski. Like Swindon have signed since Thomas Malazinski. Like he's completely changed our season. He's been our best player, and yeah, he's revolutionized the import D man in my eyes.
Nice one. Dan, anything to add to that? It was quite a hefty one.
Yeah, I
From
mean,
an
I've
unbiased
got
point of view as well.
yeah. Obviously, people know I'm not got a biased opinion at all. People, if they've seen me at the games, I don't celebrate goals anymore. I wish I could, but
Yeah,
I don't celebrate Swindon goals. I don't celebrate any goals. But for me, the best D man is going to be Ryan Wells. It's just obviously back in the EPL days when you obviously had the five imports, you saw the D men that were coming in there. And I think comfortably, even in the EPL days, Ryan Wells would comfortably be the best D man still. I think the way Swindon were playing in the first half of the season, their defence is what got them into the position that they were, just keeping the pucks out. And Ryan Wells is another big factor of that as well. His offensive attributes that he can bring into the game is second to none. I can't remember last time we saw a D man that's offensive like him, and also can match it in his defensive skills as well. Obviously, we had Brock Bartholomew that was obviously very good offensively, but I don't think he matches the defensive attributes of Wells. Um, and I just think he's a guy now that if you're going to sign an import D man, that's the import caliber you need to have in D. And I think, yeah, like Charlie said, he set a new standard for import D men. And if Swindon can keep hold of him, he'll be a very big part going into next season. And he's also going to be a massive part of playoffs because we all know that keeping the puck out of the net is the main thing about playoffs and winning. And yeah, I think Swindon have every chance with the D that they've got.
yeah. But I overrode it, and I did put McMullen purely based off success he's had with Leeds, and I still think he goes under the radar a bit, McMullen, with what he does, and considering he's not a big D man, he's a smaller size D man, but he's so strong on the puck for his height. He's so strong. The forward of the season then, and we got controversy. We got a lot of backlash for this actually, and we chose Sean Miller. Now, this is another case of you don't just pick the guy who's got the most points. Now, no disrespect to Owen Sobchak, by the way, ridiculous player. He's the best playmaker I've seen this season. That speaks for the amount of assists he's got. He puts it on a tape every time for Svek and Chamberlain. There's a reason why they've got so many points as well, and Sobchak's a massive part of that. But for me, as an all-rounded player, the impact he's had on the team, and also he's only played 45 games, I believe, or he might have played a couple games this weekend. He's played 46 games for Romford and he's got 96 points. He's got, I think, the second or third best points per game percentage. And every time I've watched a game with Shaw Miller and he's been the best player on the ice, maybe bar Ryan Wells, but we've watched Romford a lot this season and he's been the best player on the ice. And they were this close to winning against Leeds. That first leg, he got 2 goals, 3 assists or something, 5 points against Leeds. And some of the Leeds players were saying how unbelievable Miller was. So we went with Miller. He's impressed me the most. I think he's the best forward in the league. Best import forward for sure. Charlie, anything else to add on that one? Did you agree with it? I'm just going to go for a wee, so I'll let you speak.
I think Dan will probably agree with this as well. I think like you could roll a dice with like six players on it, and if any of it landed on them, you'd be happy to give it them as forward of the year. I don't think there is a clear cut for forward of the year. I think Sobchak's up there. I think Kieran Brown's up there. I would have given it. I probably would have given it Miller. I really do like Miller. I just think he's brilliant. Um, I think you could look at Huff. People would put Bricknell in there as well. Someone put Bobby Chamberlain in there. So there's so many different players which could have got it. I don't think it's as like clear cut, but I just think Miller again, he's just one of them guys who like he really did carry Romford through periods of the season and really put his team on the back. And I think that's crucial in my eyes.
Yeah, I mean, this league is so import driven. Like we know this league is. If you look at the top 10 in points, I think there's only two Brits in that table, and all the rest are imports. We know what impact imports have, and the caliber of imports that are coming into this league now are very, very high. And Romford, in the situation that they had to bring in a guy that they knew was going to be able to score points and be able to drive a play, be able to carry a line, and Sean Miller for me has done exactly that. No, like we said already, you cannot give enough credit to Sobchak. He's the first guy to hit 100 points twice this season because he got some points taken away.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I couldn't look over Miller just because of the team that he's on and the scenarios that he's had to be in. I mean, he's carried that team to a semi final, to a final of the cup. Like he's carried that team there, and he's come up in so many big like chances. He's come up in so many big times, and yeah, he's another guy that yeah I just couldn't look past.
Yeah. So he is our forward of the season. Also, Walker Summer, shout out him. I thought he was
Mhm.
brilliant. Eric Henderson and Thompson, they kind of changed Telford for the good. Their points per game is crazy. We've raved on about Henderson this season. But yeah, Miller just edges it for me. And we've given our reasons why. But if you have different opinions, that's absolutely fine. That's what it's all about. Team of the season then. So I've limited us to three imports, as you can only have three in a team. I think Charlie might have a team with two in, just because he didn't want to overpile it with imports. But I'll start with mine then. And in goal, it could only be Gospel. If you haven't got Gospel, I'd be very shocked. But I think there's been other goalies who've been good. Rennie's had a great season, probably his best season in a Wildcat shirt. Headley still performed at that level. And yeah, but it's got to be Gospel. The two D men. Um, I've gone with McMullen. I probably should put Wells in there, but I've gone with McMullen because I've chosen him as the D man of the season. So I'm going to go with McMullen. I love Wellesley off the ice as well. Great guy. But I've gone with McMullen. And then next to him, I've gone with it's a toss up between two for me. It's either Tom Norton, who I think's been again same old Tom Norton. You know what you're getting with him. He's scored a boatload of points as well this season. He's the highest scoring Brit D man, 44. Or I'm gonna just shout out one which may not get many mention. That's Liam Stenton. Um, I think I know Solway haven't quite made the playoffs, but Charlie, you raved about him so much. 13 goals this season. The amount of ice time he must have had would be ridiculous, and the sky's the limit for him. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Norton, but Stenton is there as well. I think a close second behind. So McMullen and Norton in D, and then the forwards for me speak for themselves. Obviously, I've got to include Miller. Miller's got to be in there for me. Owen Sobchak, and then Kieran Brown, winning the league with Leeds again. His points per game are ridiculous, even though he's missed quite a few games. So yeah, Kieran Brown, Sobchak, and Miller are my front three to complete the team. Jake Britnell's unlucky to miss out. I think Jake's been brilliant for us this season. He had a little tough patch at the start where he struggled, but since then he's been lights out, obviously finishing top goal scorer. So Gospel, Norton, McMullen, Sobchak, Miller, and Kieran Brown is my team. Charlie, on to you.
Gospel, of course. Ryan Wiles, of course. And Rhodes Mitchell King is my other D man. I don't know, like I was struggling on the other D. Like you could put McMullen in there and have two import Ds, but there was something when I think about Telford this year and how much problems they've had at D. I think second half of the season, Rhodes Mitchell King exploded. Um,
41 points, 10
and
goals.
and I think in the first half, if I'm not mistaken, I remember him having quite low points. And then suddenly in the second half of this season, he's been at like a point a game. He's been scoring clutch goals. He's been amazing, man. And the last two games I've watched him play against Swindon, he's been lights out. And he scored two against us in their rink. And I know he was good in the home game this weekend. And I just think like he's gone completely under the radar. I've not heard anyone speak about him, and he's a phenomenal young D man, and he's been a huge reason why Telford are in playoffs. A huge reason, and he probably plays 35 minutes a night, so he must be knackered at the end of the year. In forwards, obviously Kieran Brown, he'd probably be the first guy put up there. Shaw Miller on the wing, and then this is the one I've just been umming and ahhing about the whole time because like the easy one to pick is Sobchak, and I love Sobchak, but I'm gonna go Sobchak because I just have to. Like I
Who's
can't
the other
not.
guy you were umming then?
I was umming with Luke Ferrara. I think Luke Ferrara's had a really good year. And I think Luke Ferrara again has been probably the second best British forward in the league behind Kieran Brown. I put him over Bobby Chamberlain. I just think Luke Ferrara's missed a consistent, you know what you're getting, but I can't not put the top point scorer in the league who scored. Wow, I don't know how many points he got in that Phantoms game, but something like 117 points this year.
Yeah.
Like that's ridiculous. You can't knock that, and so I'll put him in there. But Luke Ferrara was very close, just because I think again, he plays in a team which probably is a lower scoring systemed team, and he is their captain and he thrives. But that's mine. Rhodes Mitchell King's my kind of little underrated shout.
Nice one. Dan, go through yours then.
Yeah, so I've gone with Gospel, no surprise.
Shut.
My right D, I've gone with Ryan Wells.
Yeah.
Um, like I've said, he's unreal. My left D is actually someone that you were talking about. I put Stenton.
Oh,
I
nice.
put
Yeah.
Stenton in mine because every time I watched him this season, I love the way he plays. I love what he brings to that defense. I think he's taken on that captaincy role perfectly. I think giving him that role was always going to be a risk because of how young he is and stuff like that. But I think he's had a perfect season with it. And I think he's got so much more to his game that he can grow and he could potentially be one of those top Brit D men in this league if he keeps going. And then in forwards, I've gone with Miller. Obviously, like we've spoken about before, I've gone with Brown as well. Obviously, like we've spoken about before. And then, like Charlie, I was looking at Ferrara and Sobchak because it was so hard to pick. But I went with Sobchak because
It's
you
so
can't
annoying.
you can't look over the top point scorer like Charlie said. You just can't do it. I know that's what a lot of fans were getting annoyed about that while we picked Miller as player of the season and stuff like that. But I want I massive credit to Ferrara because he is one of those big game guys. But you can't, yeah, I can't look over Sobchak. So yeah, that's my team.
Nice one. So that is our players of the season and our teams of the season. Let us know yours online. I know there's been a few floating around Facebook and on the group chats as well. Right then, shall we get into going through just each team, quick fire, a player who has impressed you this season from each team. It doesn't have to be the best player. You don't have to go with Brown, or you don't have to go with Sobchak. This is a player who's impressed you, you've liked watching, and a little line. So we'll go from the bottom upwards,
I'll
starting
go
with the Bristol.
last each time.
Okay, Charlie will go last each time, starting with the Bristol Pitbulls. So I'll go first on this one because I've shouted them out a lot this season. It's all right if we have the same one, by the way. But I'm going to go Reece Smetham. He's been one of the bright sparks of the season. 20 years old, 21 years old, 17 goals, 21 assists, 38 points in his first season with the Pitbulls. And yeah, if they can keep him, they've got a real gem on their hands. So I'm going to go with Reece Smetham, Dan.
Yeah, I've picked Reece Smethan as well. You can tell he's been away in Canada.
Yeah.
The way he plays, he sort of really plays that Canadian style and he uses his body really well. Every time I've watched Bristol, I was obviously talking to everyone that we've spoken to that he's got a lot more to show. And I think next season, if Bristol can have a bit more successful season, bring a few players in, I think he could be a really big part of that top six.
Nice one, Charlie.
Cam Hamill,
Nice,
we
yeah.
interviewed him at the start of the year. I just really like him. He was one of the one of the players who just gives 110% every week. And I also really liked that he went on the Bristol forum and put a lovely thank you message out. I just think he's exactly what that Bristol team needs when they rebuild, and he'd be one of the first players I'd sign up next year if I could.
31 points as well, and he's been
Yeah,
given the ice
underrated.
time um, a lot more than he got at Milton Keynes in a bigger role. So fair play to Cam, and I agree. I love that. Even though Bristol had a tough end to the season, he put a nice little message out, and I know a lot of the Bristol fans love that. On to the Bees then, and they've had quite a lot of players come in, some players playing some games, but I have to go with him. Will Stead has been brilliant, and 26 goals this season. He's almost taken on that Glenn Billing type role where he just sits in front of the net, and I reckon at least 20 of those 26 goals have been around the crease. So Will Stead for me, great guy as well. We've had him on the podcast a couple times, and he said that he prefers playing forward. He's back at forward, and he was their third top point scorer. So Will Stead for me, Dan.
I'm going at the other end of the ice. I'm going for Max Wright.
Oh
Every
yeah,
time I've
yeah.
watched him, he's been unbelievable. He's kept that Bees team in games that they shouldn't be in. He's got them wins against Leeds twice. He's got them huge wins when they needed it. He's come up big, and yeah, he's been lights out all year. And he was very close to being on my team this season for goalie. He was very close.
Yeah. I've enjoyed Max Wright as well. Well, not when he's beaten us. Charlie.
Ty Cathcart,
Oh
underrated
yeah,
man
yeah.
at this level. Had a really good breakout year for me in this league, and I think if
Got his
Bees,
first goal the other day as well.
I think he'll get a contract if Bees aren't here. I think he's established himself as a National League D man, which a lot of teams would take on their third pair. And I like the way he plays, hard gritty, grinds out the net. May not be the most technical, but he'll give 110% every night.
Nice one. On to Solway. And there's a few you could choose. Obviously I mentioned Stenton we mentioned Stenton in our team of the seasons, but I'm gonna go with Mr. Callum Boyd. And he's got 11 goals this season. 11 goals, 5 assists. He loves a little breakaway, he loves a little short-handed goal. And I think he sums up what exactly the type of player you'd want on your third, fourth line. And he's definitely been a bright spark for Solway this season. And no disrespect to him, but I hadn't heard of him before Solway come in the league, and he's really established himself in having a role in the National League. So I'm going to go with Callum Boyd. Dan?
Yeah, well, I actually had Callum Boyd as well, but
Oh,
I'm going to switch it up because I don't want to be the same. I went with another depth guy though. I went with Lewis Young. I think
oh,
he
Charlie's smiling.
he's a guy that again no one really speaks about him a lot, but he's a guy that will work. He'll work hard every game like Boyd. He's picked up some goals this season. I think he's picked up a few more than last year, but he's going to keep wanting to grow his game. And again, he's a Scottish lad. He loves Solway and he loves the team. He also likes the pod. Me and Charlie spoke to him after one of the Solway games, so
Yeah,
Nice one,
credit to him.
Charlie.
that was a weird experience.
Pretty sure you had the same, didn't you, Charlie? But
Well, I've gone for Joey Coulter instead.
you
I
did
think
have
he's
Young though.
I did have Young, but Joey Coulter, another one. Me and Dan, I remember mentioning it when we were watching Solway. He's one of them players. He reminds me a little bit like Luke Johnson, but he's added a little bit of what Solway needed. A team which is very young, full of a lot of Scottish players. I think a lot of the season he's been playing with Torrin Anderson and Carl Carruth, and he's just been that experienced head in between, which has kind of had that two-way game, a bit like Dan Rose as well from Bees. So I think he's a decent little player, and I think he's added a part to Solway which they didn't have last year.
Nice one. On to the playoff teams then. Starting with the Tigers. And I'm going to go. I mentioned him earlier, James Smith. Again, a couple of years ago, he was playing down in the National One slash National Two. Fast forward a couple of years, he's a great third, fourth liner for the Telford Tigers. He's got 24 points this season, 13 goals. He'll drop the gloves. He'll stand up for his team. The player that I'd want in my team. And yeah, I'm going to go with James Smith. Dan?
I've gone with Eric Henderson.
Yeah.
Um, he's a guy. It's quite a boring one, but Telford. We know they've struggled to keep the puck out of that this season. They brought these two imports in at the same time. They needed some offense. Skaleski was obviously injured at the time as well, so they really needed them to sort of come in running. And every time I watch Telford, I've loved Henderson even more. I think his work rate is second to none. I think his offensive presence is second to none. His two-way game is unreal. If I was going to sign an import, obviously as a lower end team, I would like to have Henderson in my team because you just know what you're going to get with him. You're going to get a hard-working import that's going to put the puck in the back of the net.
Yeah, nice one, Charlie.
I'll go for Ryan Leese. He's just 17 turned at the start of the season, and I just think a 17-year-old who's been relied on so much this year. Telford at points I think have had four D men, and he's been one of them. He's consistently played, I believe, every single game of the National League season, which the best thing you can have is availability. That's the best trait you can have. And Ryan Leese has just been a very solid player for them this year, and I think at 17 years old, he's going to keep pushing forward, and I think people forget how young he is.
Yeah. He's been thrown in the deep end a bit as well in terms of having to eat up minutes at such a young age. The Raiders. Oh, I could just go Sean Miller. I'm not going to because that's basic. We've spoken about him too much. I'm going to go with Marco Pascal. I think he's impressed me when I've watched him. Don't get me wrong. I think he's got a lot to learn in terms of he's still quite a smaller guy, but he's adapting a lot more to the National League. And yeah, I really like the way he skates. He's a quick D man as well, and he's someone that TJ picked out to watch out for. They've played together for years. So Marco Pascal for me, damn.
I didn't pick him as my young player of the season, so I've gone with TJ Anderson. Um, I honestly, it was so close. I was honestly close to picking him as well. But he's had an unbelievable season. He's got such a bright future ahead of him. He's got such a nice family as well. Credit to them for always making us feel welcome. But yeah, TJ Anderson, he's unbelievable on the puck. He's got some really nice hands, and yeah, I think he's going to be a very dangerous player in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Charlie.
Gone for Brandon Ailiff. I
Oh,
think he got put in a
Nice,
role
that's
which
a good
maybe he
one.
wasn't always meant to do this year, but he got put in a top six role, and I think he's done really well. And I think the stat which stands out to me is Brandon Ailiff has got 22 goals this year, 43 points in 54 games. Again, availability. He hasn't missed a game. I think there's some crazy statistic about how many games he's played in a row for Romford. I'm pretty sure TJ's dad told me, but yeah, just a big year for him. I don't think I've not seen him on the score sheet as much as I have as this year, and I think he's stepped up when Romford lost a lot of forwards last summer.
Yeah, I agree. He's been really good, and it helps when you're play with Miller and Shufelt. So he was a nice little centerpiece for them. The Sheffield Steel Dogs. Then obviously they lost probably I'd say their best player, their most all-rounded player in Sam Tremblay. But I'm gonna pick someone who I think stepped up to the plate since he's gone, and that's Bjorkley Nordstrom. And he's obviously had some appearances with the Steelers. He got his first Steelers goal as well this year. 58 points in 38 games. I think he's the guy to watch out for. I really do think he'll make the Elite League at some point full time. So I'm going to go with Bjorkley Nordstrom. Dan?
I've gone with a boring one, but I've gone with Summer just because.
Yeah, that's fine.
Me, mate. Yeah,
Sorry,
he
mate.
scored. He casual 56 goals. Thank you very much for that one, Dan.
But this is the reason because it's look at the 5-on-5 goals. Like they're massive. He's a guy that finishes the puck. When Sheffield need to get the goals, he always comes up big. And yeah, he's just that offensive presence that they need. And I'm sure they'll be looking at hopefully holding on to him for next season as well.
Nice
Yeah,
one, Charlie.
I've gone for Sam Cooper, a player I've always liked, to be fair, but
Nice.
I don't know. He's just played a lot of top line minutes this year against, as we've mentioned, Sobchak, Miller, Bricknell, all of these top guys, and I think he's had a decent year, and they made it to a cup semi final as well, which I didn't think he played badly in either, and he's had a challenging year, obviously playing against the top boys, but I think he's done a good job with Kirk. And yeah, I like Cooper. I think people forget how young he is. I think he's 22, 21 years old, which shows how young he is.
Yeah. Peterborough Phantoms then. I'm gonna go with Jarvis Hunt. I think he's had a much improved season. He's improved on his points, on his goals. He's got 14 goals, 16 assists to 30 points. He's got a much bigger role this season with the Phantoms. He's on their power play as well in the slot. He loves that little position, Dan, doesn't he? Just pulling away and then getting that shot in. So I'm going to go with Jarvis Hunt. Probably a big Slava guy for the future when a couple of those older guys move on. Dan?
I'm going to go with the guy that's back in his home, and I've gone with Nathan Salem.
Charlie.
He's a guy that
You can just tell by Charlie's reactions.
he's a guy that he just looks at home in Peterborough. He loves being under Slava, and Slava, like we said in other podcasts, he always gets the best out of Salem, and he plays that game that no one enjoys, but he really gets the job done this year. And I mean, I've seen him against MK and MK when they won, and he was unreal. Like the way he steps up to those big games is so big, and yeah, he's a huge guy for Peterborough. He's going to be a huge guy going into playoffs when you have those gritty battles going into the final ends of it.
Yeah, he's found
Yeah,
his
I'm
way. Go on.
gonna go for a 17-year-old. I think he's had a really good second half of the
Yeah.
season, and that's Louis Kynaston.
Yeah.
Scored a big goal in against Leeds, and I've just checked, he's got 4 points in his last 5 games. So he's had a cracking end to the season. He scored 14 points this year, but I think, as many will know, he's not the tallest of fellas on the ice. He looks very small, and he is, but he plays his role really well, and I think he's got a brilliant hockey IQ, and you can just see Slava's like coaching style over him, and I think give him a couple of years, he'll be naughty on the draw. He'll win most face-offs, and I think he'll be a very good depth piece for Peterborough. And Louis Carnaston, I think he goes under the radar.
Yeah. Shout as well, Duncan Spears. I thought you were going to say Duncan, but he's only played 38 games. Charlie obviously had his prediction that he'd be back to a point per game. He's pretty much got that this season. So that he's again he's coming into form at the perfect time. The whole Seahawks then, there's plenty of players. You could probably say. I don't really want to go with this crazy obvious one. He might get a ban, but I'm going to go with Josh Hodgkinson then. I think he was a great ad for them this season. Obviously, he signed during the season, only played 35 games, but he's got 16 points. He's looked much better at Hull than he has done at previous seasons. I think he's kind of found a home at Hull. And yeah, I'm going to go with Hodgkinson. If he doesn't get a ban, I think he could be a big part of this playoff run as well with the Seahawks. Dan?
I had Hutchinson as well. I had the same reason,
Oh,
but you went with him. We went with him, so I'm going to go with another guy that's probably got a ban, and that's Chamberlain. I
ban
think
teams.
Chamberlain. Yeah, he's had an unreal year. Like no one can look past that. We've spoken about him so much. I won't speak too much on it, but yeah, he's just been a big part of that whole team, and I think that captaincy role has really helped him as well. So well done, Bobby.
Yeah,
My
Charlie.
player is, I don't think he's getting banned, but he goes viral on Instagram quite a lot, and that is Lee Bonner. I think at the start of the season, I remember us on the preview talking about how we want to see Lee Bonner back to a good position, and he's hit a point a game this year, and I think he's been a better version of Lee Bonner than we saw the year before. And the one thing I find crazy about Lee Bonner, and we'll see if this goes on in playoffs, he loves playing Leeds Knights. He scores every game against Leeds. If you look at all the Leeds whole games, Lee Bonner pops up with the biggest of goals, and then he gets 50,000 views on Instagram. And Lee Bonner's been good this year. I think he's had a good year, 50 points, 49 games. I think he's done his role well. And I have a feeling that he'll be one of them guys who steps up in playoffs. I think he'll be one of them pieces who's excited for playoffs and steps up.
Yeah, good season for him. He's definitely improved from the season before. Swindon Wildcats then. Oh, who am I gonna go with? I'm gonna go with Rennie Marr. I think he's had a great season. The best like level I've seen him play at a 9-1. I think me and Charlie were talking before the season. We wanted him to get over that 9-1, and he's done that this season. And obviously he's had a much improved defense in front of him, but you've still got to make those saves. And I think he's had a really good season. He's got a big role in this playoff push. So Rennie Marr for me. Dan?
I've gone with Dylan Lipsey.
Oh, yeah.
Um, this year. I think that
15
the
points.
when that line's been playing at its best of obviously with Dylan Lipsey and Shaw, I think they've been so big. The way they forecheck, the way they play. Dylan Lipsey's been a bit more gritty this year. He's dropped the gloves a few times as well. He's sort of growing into his game, and he's sort of starting to find it a little bit, getting into the dirty areas in the corners, which is what you want from your young Brits. And I think he's going to be you go into playoffs and you look at depth. I think if you can get Dylan Lipsey obviously playing at his best, I think he's going to be a big part of that playoff push as well.
Yep. Charlie?
I think you guys are gonna go, oh yeah, when I say this one. It's one of these ones. I think he shocked us all massively this year because I think he had a season which we didn't know whether he was still capable of, and that is Sam Godfrey. He had an unbelievable season this year, and just I don't really. He played with Wales for about half the year, and he just seems to work. Like his passing was really crisp this year, and I just thought one of the
54
reasons our
games
defense
as
was
well.
so good is he just seemed to really click this year, and Godfrey. I think a year ago I thought, oh, he was okay last year, but how's he going to be a year older? And I think that was one of the best seasons I've seen Sam Godfrey play, and I was really impressed. So yeah, I just like Sam Godfrey this year. Lucy
Yeah.
will like that as well if
Because we
she's
are
listening.
because we are Swindon fans, I do want to shout out a couple more players. Glenn
Thomas
Billy,
Malazinski, still the GOAT, maybe 37 years old, but he's going to dunk
38,
in
Charlie.
playoff. 38 years old, but he's going to dunk in playoff. We're going to do a playoff player of this season, and I'm already giving it to number 89.
But no, shout out Glenn Billin, 72 points for number 72. I think he's been brilliant this year. And then I think we have to give him his flowers. Jake Britnell, top goal scorer of the league. As we said, he had that little patch where we were a bit like, oh, okay, what's going on here? But he has absolutely smashed it this second half of the season. You know what you're getting with him. He's scored some brilliant goals. He's created some brilliant moments. So I do want to shout out Brixie. Great guy as well. Really, really nice guy. And I've had some great conversations with getting to know him personally this season. Obviously working with Swindon. So shout out Britnell. Milton Keynes. Then we mentioned Max. I've mentioned Max Stewart already. But I am going to go with someone who I've enjoyed watching, and that's Ben Solder. I think they've got they've obviously got Martelli, who's a great talent, and he's we've known Martelli for the last 3 years, watching him with Streatham and Milton Keynes. You've obviously got Forsberg, Spanifold, but I think Ben Solder goes under the radar. He scored a couple big goals recently as well. So yeah, I've liked the way Ben Solder's played this season. Dan?
I've gone with a guy that people didn't really like it when he came in, but Patrick Forsberg.
Yeah.
From day one, I know Charlie can back this as well. I've said I really like the way he
Point your
plays.
game.
I love what he brings to MK, and I've also had a little opinion that he could definitely potentially be up there with import D men like McMullen and Wells. I think he's definitely got that in his game. The way he can do a stretch pass up the ice on that big rink, the way he can keep his head, the way he uses his stick. I think he's been an unbelievable addition for MK, and I think it's a guy that they should have had from the start of the year. I think that's more of the D man that they needed.
Yeah, Charlie.
I'm gonna show a bit of goalie love. I'm gonna give mine to Will Curlin.
Yeah, I like
The
that. Yeah.
best. I think he's been the best backup in the league. And I was just looking through the MK roster: 17 games, 13 wins, and a 90.97, like close to a 9-1. Like, I think some would argue the lad from Leeds, but I just think Will Curlin, 17 games, quite a lot for a backup, and he's been really good. I think he goes under the radar, and I think he could definitely, if he wanted to, do a kind of like 1A, 1B at another team where he takes on 50% of starts. Because I think since the Bristol days, he's had two really good seasons as a backup, but also he plays more than an average backup.
Yeah, 17 games is a lot of games, and been thrown out in some big games as well, actually. So I like that pick, actually. Leeds Knights. Oh, who do I go with from the Leeds Knights? You know what? I'm just gonna go with it. Finn Braden. We haven't spoke about him too much on this episode. We've done plenty of speaking about him down on other episodes, but just a crazy season for him. 57 points as a 19-year-old, 26 goals. He's meant to be a third liner. They don't really have three. you know what I mean? Leeds, it's not about that. I spoke about that with Innes. But yeah, Finn Braden for me, brilliant season. So I've got to go with him. Dan?
I've gone with a guy that I think we've seen more of his game this year. I've gone with Matt Barron.
Yeah, great
He's
player.
the guy that stepped up to the plate when needed. We spoke about him in other episodes, how when Brown was injured, he stepped up to the plate. He's turned up in those big games that I've watched against MK, scored some big goals, made some unbelievable passes. But yeah, Matt Barron, I think we knew he had that in his game, but I think this season he's really shown what he's got.
Nice one, Charlie.
The guy I've gone for started off in the league below at the start of the year, and they may have thought they had 60 men better than him, but now he's playing second pair minutes, and that's Bailey Perry. I just think like at the start of the year, I remember I think we had him on the podcast. He talked about how he captained the Knights twos, and he did a really good job in the Knights twos. But they very quickly realised what they were missing in Leeds in Bailey Perry, and kind of I think Ollie talks about he's got this grit and strength which goes under the radar, and like he's one of them. I call him probably a psychopath where he'll just jump in front of any puck no matter who shoots it, and you just need that to win a league title. And he's just one of them guys who, at the start of the season, he was out the lineup, but it was not long until he got put straight back in the lineup and he was on second pair with Griffin. I think he's been with Griffin last year as well. And I just think goes under the radar, just one of them pieces which you need to win a league. And it's not about having pretty pieces as a whole team. You don't have to have these unbelievable skilled who score loads of goals. He didn't score this year, yet he played such a big role in Leeds winning the league. And he's not a points guy. He's a guy who just puts his heart on the line for the team. And
Yeah,
I really like Bailey Perry.
yeah. I agree with that. He didn't take going to Knights 2 as a negative. He
And I
took
love
it
that as well. I
as a
didn't
positive.
mention that, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Another player who's done really well is Innes Gallagher. A much improved season. He's been a part of that brilliant third line. So we'll cut to his interview now, and then after our interview, after you've listened to that interview, we'll go to our playoff predictions. Charlie's favorite part of the season because of last season. So we'll cut to Innes Gallagher now. Hello and welcome back. We've got another special guest on the podcast. I'd like to welcome on Cup and League winner Innes Gallagher. The season's done. How did it feel lifting the cup again, the league title with the Knights?
Yeah, it was great. It was I think all agree it was a pretty long season, especially to the tail end. It was a grind, but to get it over the line, it was great and kind of what it meant to everyone.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a great feeling.
How's it been for you then? Obviously, this is your first full season in the National League as well. Obviously, you got a bit of a taste of it last season with Leeds, but how have you found your first full season with the team?
It's been great. Boys have been amazing. And playing obviously more minutes, finding my feet more. It's definitely a change from what I was playing last season in Scotland. But yeah, it's been great. I'm absolutely loving it down here. So
I think
so
the
yeah,
big thing we've noticed with Leeds, obviously, you've got them three lines, and then you've obviously got Ethan as well, and then you've got some of the young guys coming through. But the third line, especially, Ollie, and Finn have played together pretty much the whole season. You've been put out in big moments to start all the games. How have you found that responsibility playing next to those two as well?
yeah, it's been great as well. The trust Ryan puts in us three is great, and we absolutely love playing together. I think. Well, hopefully they agree with me, um, but yeah, they're great. They're great guys, and absolutely love playing with them. I think we know our role, and we play it really well. Um, just try to stick to that as possible, and work hard, and I think we're getting some rewards from it. So.
Yeah. How for people watching who might not have seen you play too much, how would you describe kind of your game and what you bring to the team?
I think, especially this season, more kind of like a power forward, so it can
Yeah.
definitely get up and down the ice, and like to think I've got a good shot. But yeah, just kind of being that guy who can get up and down, kind of do it all really, and yeah, just try banging some couple goals here and there.
I remember that
Um,
first pre-season game actually we took the trip up to Sheffield. Do you remember it? The crazy 9-7 game. And I think you had 3 or 4 points. You, Ollie, and Finn were just. I think you might have got two. Did you get 2 or 3 goals in that game as well?
I think I got two that
Yeah.
game.
And we
Uh-huh.
were like, that third line is going to be a problem this
Yeah,
season for the rest of the teams.
I was we were buzzing that game. Yeah, I was nuts. Um, yeah, so that was good fun.
Um, this season, then it's been a lot t tighter than last season. And Milton Keynes pushed you guys right to the end of the season. Obviously, that big game a couple weeks ago. What was it like playing in that? It was probably maybe the biggest, apart from maybe the final against Romford, that might be one of the biggest games you played in, most competitive games. How was that playing in that game, knowing you guys had to win that game?
Yeah, I think we all knew it was kind of sink or swim. And we didn't. I don't think we changed the game very much. Just kind of approached it same as every game. And yeah, going back, obviously we started the game off and that was ridiculous. Like couldn't hear anything. You've got almost 3,000 people just screaming and doing whatever they need to do to try to put you off. So um, yeah, it was really intense, but also one of the funnest games I've been a part of. Just the first period was back and forth, both teams going at it, all the way getting ragdolled in the crease as usual. Um, so yeah, it was absolutely amazing to be a part of it.
It just seems as well like in those big games, those big moments, the second leg of the final as well. Maybe you went 1-0 down against Milton Keynes. You obviously a goal down going into the second leg. What is it about this Leeds team where you almost know you can get back into any game no matter what the scoreline is?
Yeah, I think we just needed to come in and just regroup. There was definitely no sense of panic or urgency. It was just 40 more minutes of hockey or however long was left, and yeah, like you said, we always get it done, find a way, and I think that's down to Rise. Just long time to go, and just let's regroup and take it a shift at a time and do what we need to do, and that's what happened. Especially that you've got Kieran Brown and Matt Barron, isn't it? I mean, anything's possible.
They've been a joke. How especially the end of the season, you've got Brown getting hat tricks left, right, centre. I think Barron got 4 goals in a game. That one against Romford, which is like 9-5. How good have they been on the stretch? Obviously, it's a team game, but those guys pulling up with the big goals as well. What's it like playing alongside them and in training as well, where fans might not realise some of the stuff they can do?
I mean, they're just unreal. Like I feel like they still don't get the credit they deserve.
Yeah, I agree.
It's it's just nuts how they can just take over a game and just in practice as well. They're intense and it shows why they're the best in the league
Yeah.
at what they do. So yeah, it's definitely it's fun to watch them.
Barron, especially for me, I think he might not be in the top 5 points in the league, but for me, he's definitely a top 5, maybe top 3 import in the league. The way he plays a game, the big moments, the big games, and two-way as well. His defensive, he takes pride in his defense. I believe it's his birthday today as well, isn't it?
It's his birthday today.
Yeah, not
I
bad,
think
not
they're I
bad
think they're
winning
out
the
golfing.
league
So
on Sunday and then
yeah,
celebrating the birthday. But yeah, you must learn quite a bit from Matty Barham.
yeah, yeah. He's just so smart the way he reads plays, reads the ice just before everything happens. I mean, he's just a great guy as well. He's the type of guy you want to be around. And yeah, he's just insane. Like, I mean, the passing and just absolutely unreal. A quarterback back there. So
Yeah.
for sure.
We'll get back to Leeds in a second then because we've had a few young Scottish lads come on the pod and talk about their time in Scotland and it's definitely growing. Obviously you played in the SNL last season. It seems like you've grown up with the Kilmarnock teams. How's that been playing through the Scottish ranks and how do you see the Scottish kind of hockey improving over the years?
So it was great in juniors. It was a really good setup. I played for Ayr Bruins before Kilmarnock,
Yeah,
just down the road from me. That was a great junior setup, and it's it's fun to see how much it's grown. I mean, when I played, my brother played under what was it, under 16s, under 20s, and it wasn't very, it was just kind of junior hockey,
yeah,
mums and dads in the stands. And now to see what it's kind of become, like Edinburgh, Aberdeen getting in, like, 1,500 people a game,
yeah.
it's great to see. And I think it's only going to get bigger. So it's definitely on the rise in Scotland, which is good.
How did you find your first seasons then playing in the SNL? I believe you were like 16, 17 years old, that first season in the men's league. What was the main differences you kind of took out of junior and the big step up to playing with full on men?
Uh, I think that's what it was. It was just full on men, and you're just this kind of. I was just this lanky 16-year-old, and yeah, just kind of more. It was definitely kind of in juniors. I felt it was more kind of bump and run, just kind of go score a goal. Whereas that's when kind of systems and all that kind of stuff was introduced, and it was definitely more intense. Guys are finishing hits harder, and you kind of had to be aware of who was in the ice,
Yeah,
else gonna get your head caved in. So,
nice.
but yeah, it was good.
That last season, obviously with Kilmarnock, you scored, I think it's 3 points a game. How did the link with Leeds come about then? And I'm assuming it was like midway through the season, maybe, or just past the halfway mark. I remember played in a couple games, and then you regularly started playing and playing. So talk us through how you kind of got yourself involved with the Knights.
So I got an opportunity at Widnes Wild,
Yeah.
around I want to say November time. Um, when Joey Coulter, sorry, was the head
Oh
coach
yeah.
there, and good old Scottish lad. So kind of got in connection to him, and there was two other boys that came down. So if we didn't have a game on Sunday, we'd come down to Widnes. And I think we only played 4 or 5 games maybe.
Yeah.
And then Christmas time rolled around, and Ollie and Finn were on GB duty, and Joey called me, and Rye was looking for just kind of to fill in. Just he needed some players, and I was fortunate enough to be put ahead, and my name got put forward, and I went to Swindon away for my first one, so that was kind of thrown into the fire a wee bit. Um, but yeah, I absolutely loved it, and after that, I think Rye kind of liked what he saw, and it was more just if I didn't have a game on the Sunday, it was just kind of coming down. I'd drive down in the morning and then play the game and then drive home that night.
Brought back to
Um,
Scotland.
yeah,
Oh
so
wow, that's commitment.
and then working the Monday, so I was a wee bit bagged. Um, but yeah, and then Rye just kind of said, "I'd love to hear kind of every week if you can." So, and then I got offered obviously the year. So
Nice one. So
yeah.
if it weren't for Ollie and Finn going off to GB, you might not be here with the Knights at the moment.
I always remind them of that. I said I was kind
But
of
now you're
like, "Oh, I
playing
said
with
we
her.
were gone." Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of just a weird situation where you kind of take a step back
Yeah.
and look at it, oh what happened. So yes, it was a insane year last year, so to
I,
say the
have you
least.
have you moved up to Leeds, or are you still making the travel?
I've moved
Sorry,
into Leeds
down to
now.
Leeds.
Yeah, moved in the summer,
Oh, nice.
so it's much more easier rather than the travel on the Sunday morning and back. So
Did you have to travel? from those away games, did you go back to Leeds and then you had to do the drive back to up to Scotland as well?
Yeah, I
Oh my
didn't.
goodness.
I was getting chirped because I only came to the home games, and the boys were like, "Oh, come on, that's a bit, half-assed." So, but yeah, like Hull, I would just drive. If it was Hull away, I'd just drive
Yeah, it's not
straight to
too
Hull.
bad.
So it was about 5.5 hours.
Yeah,
Pitch dark, winter. So
all worth it though, getting
definitely,
that.
I definitely had funner drives, but yeah,
Yeah.
definitely worth it.
This season then, obviously, I mentioned earlier you played the whole season. How have you found it? Have you did you have any goals before the season? Obviously, you've Leeds finally got over the hump of winning that first trophy, and you guys are well up for possibly getting that treble with playoffs. But yeah, how have you found it on a personal level?
I think I just kind of came with the intention of being a solid player.
Yeah,
I didn't have, points or goals in mind. Just kind of wanted to find my feet first and, you know, give Rai something to look at, for a big moment or, you know, I think he's found that in line three and he can look to us for a play. But that's kind of what I wanted to do this year. I wasn't really thinking about goals or
yeah,
anything like that, so just kind of wanted to be me and try to find my feet here and
nice
be
one.
up.
Is there any players specifically who you kind of look towards when you join Leeds? I know Hayward is playing his final little bit with the Knights. Obviously, he's had a crazy career and he's been such a good servant to Leeds as well in the league the last 3 years. But is there any other players you kind of looked of and tried to base stuff off your game?
Um, I think being a winger now, I kind of look towards your likes of Brownie
Yeah,
and Mac, how they play the position. Read play as well, and obviously you look towards your Matt Haywood and Matt Barron, Bissonnette, who's been around the block. They know how it goes, and you know kind of take their advice. And I think that's helped me a lot, especially Matt Haywood just kind of he definitely calms me down, when it's all
he's
going a
so
bit
funny. He's so
when
funny.
it's all going a bit sideways. He's just kind of the dad of the group, just kind of like, all right, okay, let's take a breath here, and yeah, so yeah.
Ryan Aldridge then. I'd probably say he's been the key factor since he's joined Leeds. He's a winner and he's helped so many of these young players. A big one for me, which just stood out, is the likes of I think his name's Danny Harrison, and you got Vengus as well, who's coming through, and Daneko. They've actually been getting some shifts as well when I've watched the streams in the games. He's slowly kind of feeding them through, and that's kind of a bit what he did with you as well. So how have you found the whole system at Leeds? And it just works so well at the moment.
Yeah, Rye's been great with the younger guys. He kind of communicates well with us and says, as I was going to go, if it kind of goes this way, then I'm going to look to you. And your likes Daneko and Edgar's, Danny, they're great, great young guys. So smart, and I think Rye definitely trusts them as well. That's the biggest thing. Um, so yeah, he's great with the younger guys. That's what I kind of found and was attracted to at first.
Yeah.
He was communicating and saying, if you're gonna play this, and um, yeah, he's been great with me. Especially coming from Scotland, I wasn't kind of confident as in like system wise and kind of
Yeah.
plays. I was a bit in the dark. And he's been great, just kind of taking his time, um, show me show me the ropes and stuff. So, but yeah,
I
I
haven't
can't
actually
speak.
asked, how did you get into hockey? I know you were playing in Scotland, but what kind of got you into ice hockey?
So, my brother started. My brother's about 6 years older than me,
Mhm.
and I think my dad was away somewhere, I think at work, and my mum was just trying to find any sport, to trying to cling on to, and football football worked for me as well, but not for my brother. So
Yeah.
um, I think she took him down to the ice rink and took me as well, and I think I must have been about four, something like that, and I got given a pair of skates and was just kind of on the ice, and then someone threw me a hockey stick. Um, that was that was really it. It was just me and my brother skating about, and we've absolutely loved it ever since.
Have you
So
always been a forward?
yeah, I hate playing defense, so it was it was always forward and scoring goals. It was never. Um, my brother was he's much more of a centerman. He
Yeah.
he takes pride playing defense, but no, he
I
can
bet
have
you've had
that.
to. I bet you've learnt a lot though since coming to Leeds, and playing on that line with Ollie and Finn as well. Because I have to say I've definitely seen the improvement from yourself from when you first come into now. I just think you understand the game a lot more, and as you said, you might not have had those strategies when you were younger in Scotland, but since you've joined Leeds, they always have their strategies for each game, and I feel like the third line just works perfectly. I think as well, you guys own being a third line. There might on other teams there might be some players who want to play on maybe first or second line, but with Leeds, it doesn't matter what line you're playing on, you're still all enjoying playing together.
Yeah, definitely. I think we take a lot of pride in
Yeah.
being the third line. And it might sound silly to other people, but that's our role, and we're more than happy to do it. And
You don't win
um,
league titles and cups without those depth guys, but it's funny because I was going to ask about him. Finn is just having a monster season, and the fact that you'd class him as a third liner, but he's not a third liner, is he? He's so talented, and sky's the limit for him, isn't it?
yeah, he's been an absolute beast this year. I mean, from preseason playing together, and then obviously I think he had a hat trick in Solway the first game.
Yeah.
And we're like, all right, okay, he might be all right this season, but yeah, he's a great guy as well. I mean, he works so hard. Practice, in the gym, just he's absolutely earned it. And then away at Great Britain as well. Again, he just continued on this absolute monster year. So yeah, he's been incredible, and sky is the limit for him. In terms of his career. So yeah, he's exciting to see.
Before we finally get on to the fans, I was going to ask, what's the kind of, you're only 20 years old, what's the kind of future for you? Do you have any goals of playing maybe abroad in Europe, or you're just taking it how it comes, seeing how it goes with the Knights at the moment?
I think I'm just taking it, as it is now, and just taking it a day at a time. If an opportunity comes about, I'm more than happy to take it. You know, but you know, last year I didn't even know when I was at Kilmarnock. I didn't know
Yeah,
Witness Wild existed. I had no idea who Leeds had a team. Like
yeah.
I was totally in the dark. Like, um, so I mean, yeah, I'm just more than happy to be here. And just taking it a day at a time. See
Nice
what
one.
happens.
It's not bad playing in front of the Knights fans as well. They are a fairly new team, the Knights, but they've got such a big fan base. How is it playing at the castle every week? Fans chanting your name, you're getting thrown countless chocolate bars at the end of games. I see when you get the wins, and yeah, how's it playing in front of those guys every week? And I remember Ollie and Finn saying it was literally deafening on that cup final game. You were trying to communicate with each other before face off. You couldn't even hear each other.
Yeah, that was that was the loudest I've ever heard that place. I mean, it was absolutely rocking. Um, I don't even know what play we're trying to run on that face off. It was more just like, let's see where the puck goes. Yeah, it was nuts. And then Chris had that fight
Oh,
and
yeah.
I thought the roof was just going to pop off. I mean, it was ridiculous. So they're they're the best fans in the league by a country mile. They're absolutely lovely people as well.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, obviously the chocolate. Chocolate's a nice thing as well. So gotta love that. But yeah, they've been absolutely incredible this year, and I'm just glad we can get some silverware, and everyone seems to be enjoying it. So yeah,
What's your favorite chocolate then, so they know what to throw on the ice next game?
many eggs, a
Mini
lot of
eggs.
many
Oh,
eggs.
with Easter coming
So
up as well.
ho hopefully they rain down and no one steals them. So I know I think there's a person in the crowd that throws Finn the same chocolate bar every weekend,
Really?
and we've got 5 in the cupboard. Like just obviously they throw it from the top and it lands in the ice. So it's all just crumbled, and there's about 5 big bars. Like you got to start eating these soon. So
Spread it out after the
yeah,
season, once it's the summer.
yeah. We'll just start nailing them. So
Um, what's the message then to the Knights fans? Obviously, you've got your first playoff game, I think against Telford this weekend. The playoffs are probably the most intense hockey all season. So, what's kind of your message for them heading into this playoffs and to try and complete that treble as well?
just be loud, be proud, and you know we're blue and yellow. We're gonna be going. So I know they'll pack the place out. So
Yeah.
it'll be a great atmosphere, and hopefully it'll continue to Coventry. We don't want to end it here. So yeah, hope we just keep it going, and yeah, I'll be fine if I can't hear Finn and Ollie on face-offs anymore. So yeah.
Nice one. Thanks, mate. Appreciate you hopping on. Good luck for the playoffs and yeah, keep reminding Ollie and Finn that if it wasn't for them, you wouldn't be here on the nights right now.
Oh yeah, I keep telling them every week. So yeah,
Nice
thanks
one.
for having
Thanks,
me.
Innes.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, mate. Welcome back. Our final segment of the episode, the big playoff one. Charlie's going on watching him, but we hope you enjoyed that little interview of Innes Gallagher. Really nice lad. Got a big future ahead of him. Playoffs then, the two groups. If you're not familiar with how playoffs are, two groups of four. First, fourth, fifth, and eighth are in one group. Second, third, sixth, seventh. So Leeds, Hull, Peterborough, and Telford, and then Swindon, Milton Keynes, Raiders, and Sheffield in the other group. The top two of each group go through to the Coventry finals, the best weekend of the season. And Charlie predicted all 8 last season. Can he do the same this season? So, starting with group number 1, which is Leeds, Hull, Peterborough, and Telford. Both just so competitive in both groups. Should we start with myself? Shall I give my little predictions?
Save the
Um,
best till last.
yeah, predictions I normally get taken a fool out of. So yeah, we'll go with it though. I'm gonna go with top in the group, the Leeds Knights. I just think they're going to get to Coventry. And if they don't, it will be a massive shock, especially with that being the final trophy they need to win to complete the treble. So at the top, I'm going to go with Leeds Knights. And then the second place, like Telford are going to underdogs in this. They always seem to somehow make playoffs. I don't think they will this season. I don't quite think they've got the defensive core to get through to that final four. I am going to go with, and some players might not like this, who we know, but I'm going to go with Hull. I'm sorry, Peterborough. Charlie's shaking his head there. I just think the top line of Hull have got 313 points together. Sobchak, Speck, and Chamberlain. Chamberlain might not play a couple of the games. We'll have to see with his ban. But even so, if they can get Barmer, um, if they can get Phillips, if they can get that decor for this playoffs, I think they can outscore teams. I really do. We've seen so many comebacks this season. If they can just tighten up a little bit on defense, we know what Dima can be like as well. So Mostra, when it hits those big games, he can stand on his head. And I think Hull will be very disappointed if they don't make it this year. So I'm going to edge it to Hull, making it in that second spot just over Peterborough. But Slava and the Peterborough Phantoms might sit me down once again and make it to Cov. So
Say that
I'm going to go
clear.
with Leeds, Hull, Peterborough, and then Telford. We'll come to you in a sec, Charlie. Don't worry. Dan, on to you next.
So top of the group, I've gone with Leeds.
Hmm.
It's obvious. Like, I'm so confident in Leeds to make it and top of the group. Then second in the group, I've gone with Peterborough.
Yeah.
Um, I I know Slava hockey in playoffs, and it came up trumps last year. I don't think I put them to make playoffs last year, so I'm not going to make the mistake this year. And I've gone with Phantoms, and then third, I've gone with Tigers. I've gone Tigers to finish in third. I think this season they've had a tough year, but they've fought back and they've got that playoff spot. And I think that's going to be the extra sort of thing to push them through this playoff push. I think bringing in Thompson and Henderson, you started to get Skaleski sort of firing as well a little bit. I think they've got a really good morale right now. They've got some guys back. They finish a year off good. So I like their lineup going into the playoffs, and then for the bottom, I've put Hull. I know it'll be probably surprising to a lot of people, but I just think in playoffs you can't go about playoffs without outscoring teams. You have to be defensively solid. It's all about being strong in both ends of the ice. You can't go in like you do in the league because it's different. It's a different style of hockey. They could potentially have a few bans. I'm not sure if they're going to get injured players back. It's obviously not something that we know. So yeah, I don't see Hull finishing above fourth this year in playoffs.
Either way, we're going to get fans who don't like it. But hey, they'll have their opinions as well. But yeah, Charlie, finally to you. What are you
Number
going
one,
with?
Leeds. They're chasing a treble. They are so good in the playoff groups in the last 2 years, and they'll top the group. Number two, Peterborough Phantoms. Never underestimate Slava in playoffs. I think a lot of their players are hitting form at the right time, and I think we're going to see a completely different side of Living. Number three, Hull. I think they'll give it a good shot, but I think Telford are going to slip up Hull's playoff run, and then very closely followed behind them is number four, the Telford Tigers. Not to be underestimated, but I think their decor, and you mentioned this quite a lot. I think having Archie Hazeldean was really big for them last year, and I just think they missed that one D man to really solidify that decor. I think in playoffs that decor is going to be under a lot of pressure, and players like Harding and Newell are going to have to play very very well. And it's their first year in D, obviously.
Yeah. Okay, that's our four predictions for Group One. Moving on to Group Two, then. Swindon Wildcats, MK Lightning, Sheffield Steel Dogs, and the Romford Raiders. Now, I'll start again. I got to go positive, and I'm going to use your point you made, Dan, in terms of defensive stability. And I think Swindon have looked. If we can just go back to not too long ago, in those big games, we were very defensively sound, and it's been weird schedule in terms of playing some of the teams who are lower down. But I think going into this, I do think Swindon will top the group. Maybe it's a bit of bias, maybe it is. But I think you've got the likes of Ryan Wells, Britton, those big players who are going to make a massive difference this season. Fingers crossed in the playoff run. So I'm going to go Swindon number one. Number two, I do think Milton Keynes will make it. I think the players will actually react hungrier to try and make playoffs this season. They have to make it this season. They cannot go 3 seasons without making Coventry with the team they've got. It's just ridiculous, and I think they will do that. And I think Forsberg's going to be a massive part of that. I think it will be Forsberg, Wallace, and Lawrence as the trio, import trio going into that. So I'm going to go Milton Keynes second. Just missing out Romford, and I think Sheffield will finish bottom. I just think without Tremblay, he was their man. He was the guy. For me, he was the best centre in this league. And they've lost him, unfortunately, to the Steelers. And I think that's going to be a big impact on their playoff run. So I'm going to go, yeah, that's my four. Dan?
Top in the group, I've gone with the same reason that I put with the defensive stuff, like you said. I've gone with Swindon to top the group. They're so strong in D. They've got such a good D core, and I think they're going to really tighten up in D and getting obviously Rennie as well. Get hopefully Rennie's obviously back fully ready. So that's another big thing for Swindon. And then for second, I've gone with Romford.
Oh my
I've gone with
goodness.
Romford in second. I've said to Charlie before the game last weekend, and I'm sticking with it. I just think Romford are going to be that team that really cause a few upsets because it's what they love to do. You've seen them do it in the cup. They never look like being the team to win it, and they always come through and get those games. And I think yeah, Romford just got that dog in them. I think they're going to be pushing hard, and yeah, those players are going to step up. And then for third, I put MK. I think the reason that they don't get into second is because Romford is going to ruin their hopes. I think it's Romford. This is going
Got each
to.
other
They
on the
always.
first week, so that is massive for your prediction.
Yeah, so I think Romford are going to be the reason that MK don't make it. So MK, I think it's just in their head in playoffs now. I think it's such a big mental thing about them. I know they've got a few new players in and they've got sort of new heads, but I think so many eyes are going to be on them. They've got so much expectations because of how the season's gone. Obviously, they need to win a trophy this year, and this is the last chance they've got. And I think it's just going to be a bit too much for them. And in the moment. And then, like you, I've gone with Still Dogs in fourth. I just think they're a new group of lads. They're a new team. I think this season hasn't been a bad season for them. They're obviously building something special, and I think next year they'll be definitely up there in contention. But this year, I don't think it's their year, and they'll just be looking towards the off season.
All right, Charlie, on to you.
MK fans leaning a little bit closer. No, in number one, I've gone Swindon. Always back the team, always been that way. Back the boys. I think we got a good team going into playoff this year.
I'm
And I'm
excited for our
excited,
third line, actually. Vanya, Reed, and Bully. I'm excited for that. Vanya playoff
excited for
hockey.
all our lines.
Yeah.
I'm excited for playoffs this year. Should be good. Number two, I've got the Romford Raiders.
Oh
Our
my
boy,
days, you two are crazy.
DJ Anderson. About my boy. I think it'd be interesting. I think Milton Keynes' perspective. I think they need a 4 point weekend to start off the playoffs. And I think Romford. I still remember Romford fans saying to me, "We don't let MK win in our barn," and I just think that will happen again. Like, I think MK really have to come across that hurdle in the first weekend. In third, I've obviously got MK, um, and in fourth, but not least, I think they've been very underestimated in in this segment. To be honest, we've got Sheffield. I've got Sheffield, and we all have, but I think Sheffield have a huge role to play in. Who's going to get upset? I think Swindon have got a really big start to this weekend. I think since Tremblay's gone, Sheffield's form has been poor. Like, there's no denying that. They haven't been at the standard they were with Tremblay. And I just think they're going to upset some teams. And I think the two teams they're going to upset is MK, and I think Romford are going to grab 3 points from Sheffield. But I think MK are only going to grab two. And I think that will be the difference maker. And Swindon, I'm hoping for a 4 point weekend. I always back our boys. So yeah, can we do Coventry predictions as well? Because it will look colder if I get every single spot right.
I think you two are crazy for not putting Milton Keynes in,
I got
personally.
called crazy last time.
I just think it's a bit different team. But it is what it is. That's the predictions we make. Go on, do your little Coventry ones then, based on the teams you've put to get there. So yours would be Swindon versus Peterborough and Leeds versus Romford.
Yeah, Dan, you can go first if you want, or do you want me to do it?
You can go first, mate. You're the one who had the idea.
Okay. In the first semi-final would be Leeds v Romford. I back Leeds to win it. In the second semi-final, Swindon versus Phantoms. I'm going to put Phantoms to beat us and
Oh,
go.
what? You can't do that. Oh
I,
my days.
and I think it'll be a
A rematch.
rematch of last year, Leeds versus Peterborough. And I think Leeds will win the playoffs.
Oh,
Matt Hayward goes out on a treble. I think Leeds are relentless this year. I think they're very difficult to beat. And I think the minute they won that league, I think they won the playoffs.
Okay, Dan.
yeah, I've got the same outcome as Charlie. I've got Leeds to get through to the final, Peterborough to get through to the final, and I've put Leeds to win the cup because that team isn't losing this year.
The only difference between mine and Dan's prediction is Telford and Hull are in different spots.
Yeah, I'm
And
gonna go
we
with.
haven't spoken about it either, by the way, before people ask. Me and Charlie, we haven't
But we
spoken at
didn't
all.
speak about
We
it at
all
all.
we spoke about was MK, and I've said the same thing all year. So
Okay, well, I think, based on mine, then that means Leeds are playing MK and Swindon are playing Peterborough. Sorry, Hull. That is crackers of semi-finals. I'll go Swindon to beat Hull. I'll go MK to beat Leeds to get revenge, and MK Swindon final. I'm
MK
gonna
to
back
beat
the
you.
Swindon boys. Up the Swin. Swindon for playoffs. Hopefully we can get masterclasses from the boys. So that is our little playoff predictions. As we said, they're just predictions. Don't get angry.
Oh,
You
no,
have
no.
your
I want to hear the replies. I want to hear it. It's fun, isn't it? Predictions are fun, man. They're good laugh. Like I love it when someone on Twitter will be like, "Oh, these guys have got no hockey knowledge." Like, lol, don't care.
yeah. But yeah, we've enjoyed that. We won't go through wants to watches for each team. We do that quite a lot. I'm sure we'll do that in our previews
It's
next
been a long
season.
episode as well.
Yeah, it's been a long one. Anything else to add? Obviously, we have got playoffs the next 3 weeks between the teams, but at Coventry, we will all be there. So make sure to say hello. It is the last year, apparently, of the Spoons being there, but I'm sure we'll find another place to catch up and have a drink. So yeah, please do come and say hello if you see us at Cov. Um, Anything else to add? It's been a long one.
Well done to Dan and Jack for keeping the podcast rolling.
Yeah.
Like fair play to them. I think if you've got it to this point as well, fair play to you. You've listened to quite a long podcast, but I think what people don't remember about podcasts, and I give a lot of credit to my brother here. It's a lot of effort. Like once a week, every week, blocking out 2 hours, including the interview, plus editing time, which Jack does and stuff, plus posts on the Macca's Talk Hockey. Like a lot of credit to Jack. He puts in a lot of work for the podcast, and he does a really good job. I think a lot of you guys will agree. And yeah, just thanks to Jack for doing well on the podcast. Dan, cheers for being Dan, mate.
no worries, mate. Pleasure to be here.
As I said a couple weeks ago, I am doing statsy kind of posts as well on our Maccas just to make it a bit more interesting. So yeah, follow our socials at Maccas Talk Hockey, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and yeah, we'll see what happens this weekend. Massive weekend. We won't preview the games, but if we're going through them, obviously Swindon have got Sheffield doubleheader, Romford have got MK doubleheader. You've got Leeds Telford doubleheader, and then you've got Peterborough Hull. And if I have to pick a matchup I'm excited for, I think it's Peterborough Hull. If we're all saying that it's going to be between Peterborough and Hull to get that second spot behind Leeds, that is the matchup. And Peterborough got the best of them last season, so we'll have to see who does it this weekend. But yeah, we appreciate it. Well done if you've got to this point of the episode. And we'll see you next week after round one or week one of the playoffs. Peace.